Gladiators return to Europe as the 2017 Ice Speedway World Championship comes to Berlin for round 4 of the series. The German capital is the penultimate stop on the calendar and may mark a turning point in the campaign for riders who prefer Europe's artificial circuits. The third round of the 2017 campaign saw the riders return to the Medeo Stadium in Almaty for a third successive season for the Kazakhstan final. Around 6,000 fans attended over the 2 days despite challenging weather conditions that twice halted proceedings. The weekend saw Daniil Ivanov's quest for a third world title ended by an opening ride crash that ruled him out of his remaining outings with a broken shoulder. Dmitry Komentsevich also dropped back from the lead duo in the series, defeated by Igor Kononov on 4 occasions and failing to beat championship leader Dmitry Koltsikov in 3 head-to-heads. Kononov and Koltsikov both went through the heats unbeaten until their final round matchup, when it was Kononov who maintained his unbeaten run at Koltikov's expense. With the first of 2 meetings prematurely abandoned due to the encroaching fog, the podium was decided by heat scoring and the top 3 were separated by just 2 points. But day 2 provided bigger opportunities for major scoring with a full programme. Igor Kononov was again the man to beat, spectacularly maintaining his winning run by getting the better of championship leader Dmitry Koltsikov and gaining back a further point in the standings overall to narrow the gap to 3. The only moment that Kononov looked in danger of dropping points in the heats came in his 4th outing when he was trapped behind Franz Zorn and Günther Bauer before working through to pass the pair. Zorn enjoyed a strong day, making his 2nd final of the season after a mistake from Dinar Valeev when challenging for the lead in the semi-finals. But the Austrian was unable to keep up with the top 3 in the championship in the final, and the race was fought between Kononov and Koltsikov. The 2015 world champion making up ground throughout, but falling just short as Kononov completed a remarkable unbeaten weekend and narrowed his championship deficit to just 2 points heading into Europe. With Daniil Ivanov swiftly returning from the briefest of injury layoffs, Franz Zorn would have his work cut out to hold on to 5th position, while the other remaining battle involving European riders was between Stefan Svensson and Günther Bauer over 7th. After the Ice Speedway World Championships mid-season break, the racing moves on to Europe for the final stops of the series in Germany and the Netherlands. A different style of circuits in their home territory usually suits the European riders more than the wide open spaces in Russian venues, meaning closer racing and greater potential for surprises. For Russia's Dinar Valeev, his first track walk in Germany will be a first opportunity to take in the surroundings of a European stadium and the unique challenges it provides.
Hi, I'm Dinar Valeev, and this is my first time on a European circuit.
I like the look of the track here in Berlin, so I hope to have a successful weekend. European tracks are usually narrower than Russian tracks and than the track in Almaty. On the narrower tracks, it's a real challenge to find the perfect line. Also, this track is not as long as the track at Almaty for the last round, which will be a challenge in terms of setup. The other thing that will be different is that the riders will predominantly ride on the inside line, making overtaking more difficult. And the overall top speeds will therefore be slightly slower than in Russia. I wouldn't say I have a preference between smaller or larger tracks, but in Europe we have artificial ice, which is less comfortable for my style. The ice in Russia is much softer than the ice here in Berlin because it's natural.
За границей, в общем, искусственный лед, и он жесткий очень, как бы некомфортная езда.
I've never been out on this track before, so I expect to change my setup a lot after practice. One of the biggest challenges for me will be the tyre pressure. I think I will also need to find a more aggressive style of riding here, especially given that we're nearing the end of the championship. Although the series moves on to a new location, the man to beat will still be Igor Kononov, who has the most momentum heading to Europe. The reigning world number 4 has lifted the trophy in the last 4 rounds and was the winner last time out in Berlin in 2016. I think the key has been my level of motivation. This year I've been made captain of my team and that has made me more determined. Now I just need to keep this level of consistency to the end of the championship. I've kept quiet about my victories and I'm completely calm about the remaining 4 rounds. But of course I was very pleased with my results in Almaty, where I didn't drop any points. And now I'm excited about this weekend here in Berlin.
В Берлине достаточно интересный трек, хороший, всегда хорошая подготовка, и я готов бороться дальше.
The Horst-Dom Ice Stadium has been Berlin's ice speedway venue since it was brought into full operation in 1975. Since then, it's hosted a total of 24 World Finals and 6 World Team Cup Finals, making it Europe's most famous outdoor ice speedway arena. Reserve rider Timo Kankanen of Finland joined the lineup to replace the injured Jimmy Olsen, and Luca Bauer earned selection as the local wildcard. The 14 remaining riders were unchanged from Almaty, with Daniil Ivanov returning from injury. The opening race saw a match-up between the last 2 world champions, Dmitry Koltakov and Dmitry Komitsevich, and the real fight was behind them. Ove Ledstrom picked off Günther Bauer on lap 2, and the local hero seemed set to be consigned to a non-scoring first outing, only for the Swede to pick up and fall heavily in the closing stages. Franz Zorn was the initial leader of Heat 2 from the advantageous inside start position, but Dinar Valeev provided another of his customary overtaking efforts to win his opening ride. Max Niedermeyer recorded the single point at the back, with Timo Kankanen suffering a non-scoring debut. Hans Weber produced the first moment of real excitement for the local fans as he got the better of Jan Klotowski for what turned out to be an important point in Heat 3. Weber put in an improved performance in Berlin and made his first semi-final appearance of 2017. Harold Simon was one of the other 3 European qualifiers, the Austrian clearly having turned a corner following a tough start to the season and after an improved showing in Almaty. Swedish youngster Niklas Svensson was close throughout Heat 4, but was unable to find a way through around the outside, leaving Simon in second place behind race winner Igor Kononov. Dmitry Komitsevich's defeat was the most significant result in the first round of heats, which developed largely as expected. After facing 2 Russian riders in his opening outing, Günther Bauer would have to chase a semi-final space from outside of the top 8, with 4 rides remaining. After each taking a second place in their opening ride, the expected battle was between Franz Zorn and Stefan Svensson in Heat 5. But the Austrian missed the start off Gate 3, and Niklas Svensson relegated him to the back before the Swede made an error on turn 4 and the positions were settled. Dinar Valeev made hard work of taking second position in Heat 6, having left himself to fight through from the back after hitting a rut in the ice on the opening 2 turns and narrowly avoiding a bend 2 fall. The youngster had held on to third position despite his near miss, Luca Bauer struggling throughout his second wildcard appearance. and he then set off in pursuit of Jan Klatowski, passing the Czech on lap 2. By now, Dmitry Komitsevich was long gone, on his way to a first race victory of the day. Hans Weber produced more overtaking exploits in his second ride, snatching a creditable second place behind Igor Kononov at the expense of Max Niedermayer after a successful lap 3 move. A slow start to the meeting for Günther Bauer continued in his second ride. The veteran could only manage third place in Heat 8, ahead of Timo Kankkunen, with Harold Simon finding a way through for second off the final bend. 3 of the round 1 winners recorded a second race victory. Dinar Valeev, the man to drop out of the maximum hunt. Meanwhile, further back, significant competition was already developing in the lower reaches of the top 8, between the Europeans vying for the final 3 qualification places. Dmitry Koltakov maintained his unbeaten run in round 3, comfortably seeing off the challenge of Dinar Valeev. Hans Weber provided the entertainment at the back with an opening lap pass on Harold Simon, moving his personal tally onto 4 points from 3 rides. Previously unbeaten Igor Kononov and Danil Ivanov met in Heat 10, and it was the injured former world champion who came off worse after missing the start from the inside gate. Kononov extending his unbeaten run in the championship to an astonishing 18 consecutive races. 3 of the 4 competitors in Heat 11 came into round 3 scoreless, so it was no great surprise that Ove Ledstrom finally got off the mark in his third ride. Stefan Svensson took his first race win to continue a strong start to the meeting, holding off Ledstrom's opening lap challenge. After a 6-ride break, Niklas Svensson looked set to turn his day around as he led Heat 12, but a spectacular bend 4 fall ended any realistic hopes of making the semi-finals, leaving him on just 1 point from 3 rides. In the restaging, Günther Bauer took his first race victory to bring himself back into contention for a top 8 space and delight the local fans as a first German race winner of the weekend. The top 6 riders in the standings after 3 rounds appeared to have broken away from the pack, leaving 5 riders separated by 2 points to contest the 2 final top 8 places. Dmitry Koltakov and Igor Kononov had very balanced programs on day 1 in Berlin, with their starting positions matched in their first 4 outings. Koltakov made his only Gate 4 appearance in Heat 13, with Kononov off the outside in Heat 16. Koltakov converting his Gate 4 position into a win, beating the only other rider to have previously won off Gate 4, Danil Ivanov. Hans Weber and Niklas Svensson enjoyed an entertaining scrap in Heat 14 behind race winner Dmitry Komitsevich. Svensson surged around the outside of the challenging Hans Weber on the second lap to recover second place. But a day of misfortune for the Swedish youngster continued with the last lap mechanical retirement, Weber taking a useful second place at his expense. After a tough draw in his opening 3 heats, Franz Zorn was left desperately needing major points in his 2 remaining outings to take a place in the semi-finals, and Heat 15 certainly boosted his chances. The Austrian made an excellent start off the outside gate to win, while behind him his fellow countryman Harold Simon battled with Jan Klatowski until the Czech lost control on lap 2 and dropped back. Heat 16 was the best race of the day, providing 4 sensational laps of ice speedway. The opening lap saw a close fight between Heat 12 winner Günther Bauer and the previously unbeaten Igor Kononov, who'd been trapped wide by Dinar Valeev on the opening 2 turns. While Kononov was chasing the outside on Bauer, Valeev hit the front with an inside move on Stefan Svensson and put 2 riders between himself and the pre-race favourite. Throughout lap 3, Kononov was still surprisingly at the back and looked set to drop 3 points in the championship fight. But Günther Bauer's pass on Stefan Svensson changed the race once again, presenting Kononov an opportunity to cut past down the inside of the Swede into turn 3 for the final time. And somehow Kononov then stretched himself to second place, with Günther Bauer losing his way on the top bend and drifting too wide. Stefan Svensson's non-scoring Heat 16 result dropped him back into the group of European riders chasing the bottom 3 qualification positions, behind the top 5 who were already assured of their places in the top 8. Now 3 points down on Dmitry Koltykov in the championship standings after his Heat 16 defeat. Igor Kononov lined up against the points leader in round 5 with a perfect opportunity to fight straight back. But it was Koltykov who took control of Heat 17 from the inside start position, and Igor Kononov could make no impression as the championship deficit opened to 4. Heat 18 took 3 attempts before coming to a satisfactory conclusion. In the initial staging, Harald Simon put in a forceful challenge to get the better of Stefan Svensson, actually tagging the Swede as they went for the same piece of track at the end of the opening lap. But the race was stopped prematurely after comfortable leader Dmitry Komitsevich broke open the safety barriers, leading to his disqualification from the rerun. Svensson should have been the rider to take advantage, needing just second place to guarantee a top 8 place. The Swede became embroiled in a battle with fellow veteran Harald Simon, a tussle that spilled over from the first staging, with the Austrian again cutting forcefully through on his favoured inside line. Fighting back, Svensson went down heavily, throwing away the points he needed to qualify and forcing a match race third running of the heat. The winner in the contest between Max Niedermayer and Harald Simon looked set to qualify for the semi-finals, and the German attacked the heat with renewed vigour, almost seizing the position on the final 2 laps, before Simon snatched the victory and a place in the top 8. Heat 19 was a more straightforward affair. Dinar Valeyev taking the race victory from the start off gate 4, Daniil Ivanov failing to beat any of his Russian rivals throughout the heat programme, but still qualifying to the semi-finals on 11. After Harald Simon's Heat 18 win, 2 places in the top 8 were still up for grabs coming into Heat 20. And with Franz Zorn quickly hitting the front, that left Günther Bauer and Hans Weber in direct competition for the last place. Bauer got the better of Weber on lap 2, but was then disqualified for exceeding track limits on the opening 2 turns of the first lap, giving Weber a semi-final space. Stefan Svensson and Max Niedermayer both missed out on qualification by a single point, the Swede dropping out after his Heat 18 fall. Günther Bauer was the other surprise casualty, likewise after a final ride disqualification. On to the semi-finals. The lineup for this one looks like a World Team Championship heat. Russia versus Austria. Off the inside gate in red, it's Dmitry Koltykov, the championship leader who picked up a maximum in the heats and now leads the series by 4 points. Gate 2 in blue, Daniil Ivanov, never a winner here in Berlin. Gate 3 in white, Harald Simon, the 49-year-old Austrian in his first semi-final this season. And the outside gate in yellow is with Franz Zorn, bidding for a 3rd final appearance of 2017. Progression is a must for Dmitry Koltykov, but will we have any more surprises here from Franz Zorn, who's already once eliminated Daniil Ivanov at the semi-final stages this season? Koltykov, Ivanov, Simon and Zorn for the first semi-final, with 2 qualification positions up for grabs to the final here in Berlin. We're underway with a great start off the outside gate from Franz Zorn. It's Franz Zorn with the whole shot. Dmitry Koltykov, though, straight back to the inside, coming off turn 2 to take up the race lead. And you fancy now the battle is over second place between Franz Zorn in yellow and Daniil Ivanov in blue. Ivanov gaining ground there at the end of the opening lap, and he's starting to slip back now, and Franz Zorn is looking increasingly comfortable in that second place, and Ivanov even looking over his shoulder, backs it off down into the top turn and Harold Simon may have an opportunity to snatch an extra point. Ivanov looking far from comfortable. We know he's battling with that shoulder injury. And the rougher the ice gets here in Berlin, the tougher it's going to be for a rider carrying an injury. And it seems that that's exactly the situation we find ourselves in semi-final one. Zorn now breaking clear, the riders well spread out. And it's Dmitry Koltykov and Franz Zorn who sit in those top two transfer spots. And Ivanov again looking over his shoulder, running narrow to the inside and then moving out to block Harold Simon, weaving this way and that to block the Austrian, who's then gone down on the final two turns. Doesn't affect the result too much. Ivanov had the position sewn. Real blocking, though, from the rider in the blue helmet colour, having to work very hard to hold his position. And Simon just working overtime in an attempt to get an extra point. And he's gone down there on the final two turns. So it's Dmitry Koltykov and Franz Zorn who move through to the final. Daniil Ivanov surprisingly eliminated that injury, just proving too tough to handle here in Berlin. On to the second semi-final, the tougher of the two, with last year's Berlin winners Kononov and Kometsevich the favourites to progress. Kononov, Valeev, Kometsevich and Weber, the lineup for the second semi-final. The favourites off the inside three start positions, Weber the outsider, the local representative. Semi-final two is underway. A good start from the three Russian riders who all arrive level on turn one. Running wide off the second bend, it's Dmitry Kometsevich and it's Igor Kononov who moves into a race-leading position and then straight up to his favoured outside line. Dinar Valeev in second place. This would be a major scalp if he can hold on ahead of the reigning world champion. Kometsevich looking wider there around the outside line. Valeev's run a bit narrow coming off the turn. Kometsevich has the momentum, but can he find a way past? Valeev riding a sensible race here. He's running in on the mid-track line, but he's left a big gap there and Kometsevich snatches it away and then goes back up to the outside line. Valeev, though, fighting back. A highly creditable performance from the youngster who gets back ahead of Dmitry Kometsevich, having made himself exposed. Kometsevich once again on the inside line. This is brilliant ice speedway over the all-important second place. Igor Kononov is well and truly gone out in front. The race over second to decide the last of the positions to the final. It's Kometsevich who has it in the closing stages. Valeev, though, looking back to the inside. Drag race to the line. And Valeev moves across Kometsevich to snatch the position and take another final space in his rookie season. Brilliant riding there from Valeev. He was patient and on the final two turns cut back to the inside to eliminate Kometsevich. Weber at the back also out. Kononov and Valeev march on. So championship leaders Koltykov and Kononov meet for the second time this evening after Koltykov's Heat 17 victory. It's Koltykov off the inside, the 2015 champion, going off gate one. Winner of three rides from the inside gate already today. Is that an omen for the final? Igor Kononov off gate two in blue, back to winning ways in the semi-final after defeats at the hands of Valeev and Koltykov in rounds 4 and 5. They sit either side of him here. Valeev then off gate 3, back in the final for the first time since the opening round in Togliatti. And Franz Zorn in yellow, he made a sensational start from the outside in the first semi-final. He'll need to replicate that here to have a chance of standing among the top three. It's the podium decider, the final here in Berlin. Good run off the inside gate from Dmitry Koltykov, and it's Koltykov who gets there first, then moves to block Franz Zorn. Valeev is also bundling past, and then Kononov switching back to the inside off turn 2. So although Zorn had made a good start off that outside gate, wasn't quite good enough to get across, and with Koltykov moving to block, that opened an inside run for both Kononov and Valeev to find a way past. Now Igor Kononov is starting to mount an assault on Dmitry Koltykov. The top two closely packed together, and then a separate battle further down the order for third, where Dinar Valeev hasn't really been able to shake Franz Zorn. Kononov running in wider than Dmitry Koltykov, who's taking the shorter route around the circuit, but the outside doesn't seem to hold any advantage really for Igor Kononov, who is finally seemingly settling into that second place. Still a couple of bike lengths between the top two. It's the battle at the back that's starting to close in now, with Franz Zorn looking for a way past Dinar Valeev. The youngster set to hold on for a second podium finish of this 2017 season. But it's Dmitry Koltykov who's back to winning ways, ending the victorious run of Igor Kononov, who has to settle for second. Valeev making the podium at the expense of Zorn, who gets ever closer to that all-important top three. But it's glory for Koltykov, who's back in top spot in Berlin.
Комплект.
An ideal result for Dmitry Koltykov that ends Igor Kononov's dominant run and wipes out Kononov's gains from an unbeaten weekend in Almaty. I'm very happy to be on the podium in my first European race. I really felt the support from the crowd here. I found it difficult because the turns are very tight and narrow, but I gave it my all and I think I rode better here than in Almaty. Unfortunately, today was a tough race. I ended up experimenting with my spare bike because my first wasn't good enough here. I will keep working on the bike for tomorrow. I'm pleased to win and to take all of the available points, which was my aim. But we'll have to fight hard right to the end, and there's still a lot of work ahead of us. Everything is going well right now. No change to the positions within the top 8 in the World Championship, but significant points gains for both Dmitry Koltykov and Dinar Valeev meant they probably slept the best after the opening day in Berlin. After 4 consecutive victories for Igor Kononov, Dmitry Koltykov's win was an important sign of intent for the remainder of the championship. The latest stop in the FIM Ice Speedway World Championship is the most important of the season for the Team Ice Speedway Union Berlin, a home round for Germany's new 2-rider team. Set up ahead of the 2017 campaign, the project brings together the famous Niedermayer name with new convert Tobias Busch, with the aim of developing both riders and the sport in Germany. We know that in Europe the number of good ice speedway riders is very low, so we're trying to find a way to bring new blood into the sport. Each rider trying alone is very difficult, but with a team it's much more achievable. Building this team was a great idea because we've had a lot of resources come in, and all of us within the team are benefiting from that. I'm very glad to be in this team. Without this setup, I wouldn't have been able to start the process of competing in ice speedway as well as speedway. I'm very thankful that I've had this chance because it's helped me understand this new world of ice speedway very quickly. I'm quite sure it will get better and better. I'm not really the team leader here. Toby is an expert in speedway, so he can help me to improve my riding. And of course, I can share my knowledge about the ice. I do have a few advantages from speedway. I'm physically fit, and starting comes naturally to me. But the rest is very different in ice speedway, particularly the bikes and of course the terrain.
Atemberaubend ist natürlich die Schräglage, in der man sich bewegt.
I've known both of our riders for a long time, but in the past I've worked only in the winter with Max and only in the summer with Toby. I already knew them as a tuner and mechanic, so it was quite easy to bring them together. We've already had some success with Max winning the German Championship on Thursday, so within our 3-year plan, I think we can expect more. Then when some young talent comes through, perhaps we can add another to the team.
Die Geschichte ist im Moment angelegt auf 3 Jahre und ich glaube, dass wir den Erfolg, den wir jetzt schon beschreiben, auch noch weiter ausbauen können.
Outside of the race for the podium places in the 2017 World Championship, the European riders remained engaged in battles for 5th and 7th positions. Stefan Svensson led Günther Bauer in the traditional best-of-the-rest race for 7th, the German dropping a point further in arrears after his day one misfortune. Meanwhile, Daniel Ivanov and Franz Zorn were engaged in a tussle for 5th, the Russian dropping behind the Austrian after a non-scoring weekend in Almaty and only gaining back 1 point on the opening day in Berlin. I'm suffering with my injury, so later in the meeting when the ice is rough, I don't have enough strength to be powerful on the bike. That was the problem for me yesterday. After beating main championship rival Daniel Ivanov in direct competition in the semi-finals, Franz Zorn's 5th double-figure score of the season preserved what will be his best ranking since 2009 if he can hold on. Yesterday wasn't bad, but in the middle of the meeting I made a few mistakes with the setup. But once the technical problems were resolved, my starts were perfect and I was riding well, which was enough for a 3rd final of the season. Beating Zorn by a single position in the final, making the podium for the 2nd time in his career, Dinar Valeev also gained 5 points on Dmitry Kometsevich, whose advantage from 3rd in the championship was cut to 12 points. After a mere 2-point score on the opening day in Berlin, Ove Ledstrom sat in danger of dropping out of the top 10 in the championship, tied for 9th place with both Max Niedermayer and Harald Simon. But there were strong signs for the Swede at the start of the 2nd meeting of the weekend, as he challenged for the race lead, only losing the position on lap 3 to Dinar Valeev. Igor Kononov made back a point in the championship standings over Dmitry Koltakov thanks to his Heat 2 win against Daniel Ivanov. Günther Bauer rounded out the scorers ahead of Harald Simon, whose day was heavily affected by a knee injury sustained in his day 1 semi-final fall. After seeing his main championship rival take Heat 2, series leader Dmitry Koltakov was unable to match Kononov's victory as he came in 2nd behind Dmitry Kometsevich in Heat 3. Kometsevich held off a last-lap challenge to beat Koltakov for the first time since Shadrinsk. After making the semi-finals on the opening day, Hans Weber had a much tougher time in the weekend's 2nd meeting. The German was overhauled by Stefan Svensson on lap 2, the Swede relegating him to the back for the first of 2 successive non-scoring outings. Svensson then went after Max Niedermayer, who had sprinted away on the opening laps behind leader Franz Zorn. A last lap pass gave the Swede 2nd place, a strong start for Svensson, just as on day 1. Dmitry Koltakov's dropped point was the most significant result in the round 1 scoring. Elsewhere, there were no major surprises, with all of the Russian riders inside the top 8 after their opening outings. Stefan Svensson returned to the track for a 2nd ride in succession and built on his 1st ride runner-up position with a victory in Heat 5. Behind him, Günther Bauer made a decisive lap 2 pass on Ove Ledstrom, who then tucked in for 3rd. Round 1 winners Dinar Valeev and Dmitry Kometsevich met in Heat 6, but the battle behind them proved a closer contest. Max Niedermayer was in line for a 2nd scoring ride ahead of Harald Simon until the Austrian enjoyed a late race surge, dialling in his favoured inside line. Finding a way past on the final 2 turns, Simon took his 1st points of the meeting. Franz Zorn provided the day's 1st upset by getting the better of Daniel Ivanov in Heat 7. Ivanov had ended day 2 in disappointing fashion, and the new day opened in much the same vein. The result left Zorn 2 points further clear, 7 points up on Ivanov in the battle for 5th in the series. Hans Weber's struggles continued as he came in at the back in Heat 8 after losing control and dropping back at the end of the opening lap. Behind comfortable race winner Igor Kononov, Jan Klotowski successfully fended off Niklas Svensson, recording in the process his best result of the weekend with second. The main surprise after the opening 2 rounds of heats was Danil Ivanov's position on the fringes of the top 8. A 4-way tie covered the last 2 provisional qualification places, behind the top 6 who had already a 2-point buffer behind them. Hans Weber showed something of his day 1 form when he returned to the track in Heat 9, pulling off passes on both Harold Simon and Ove Ledstrom to take second behind Dmitry Koltukov. The Swede was the first to lose out against Weber's speed on the outside line, but within a lap the German had zipped past Simon as well. The Austrian was far too tentative on the inside line, and Ove Ledstrom also found his way past in the run to the checkered flag. Simon took no further part, withdrawing after aggravating his existing knee injury. A superb start for Franz Zorn was undone by an error on the first turn that almost saw him fall. Dinar Valeev picking up the lead as a result and going on to the race victory, his second of the day, to move above Zorn in the day standings. Luca Bauer failed to score in 9 of his 10 rides during the weekend, picking up his only point on day 1 at the expense of his disqualified father. He came in behind reserve rider Timo Kankkunen in Heat 11. Jan Klatovski's hopes of a first semi-final appearance of the season were dealt a blow with a non-scoring ride for the Czech in Heat 12, following a first lap fall and inevitable disqualification. In the restaging, a first lap error from Dmitry Kometsevich produced an entertaining race, with the reigning world champion battling against Stefan Svensson from the back. The Swede was holding up well until a lap 3 stoppage, when the barriers were dislodged and brought onto the circuit. Svensson was unfortunate to be disqualified, with Danil Ivanov seemingly causing the stoppage. But some justice was served, with Ivanov failing to win the rerun, Kometsevich getting the better of his fellow countryman with an outside pass at the end of the opening lap. After 3 rides, Dmitry Kometsevich was seemingly back on form, unbeaten alongside Igor Kononov. The top 5 had opened a gap behind them to 6 riders separated by 2 points in the battle for the final 3 qualification positions. Heat 13 was the best of the 4th round as Danil Ivanov missed the start from the outside gate and was left to chase down the leaders. The 2-times world champion took until lap 2 to overhaul Ove Ledstrom, by which time Niklas Svensson was sprinting clear. But by the end of lap 3, Ivanov was back in front, and Ove Ledstrom had drifted from 2nd to 4th, with Max Niedermayer salvaging a consolation point. 4 of the top 6 in the point standings after 2 outings lined up against one another in Heat 14, producing a frantic first half of the race as the riders jostled for position. Crucially, in the context of the championship, Igor Kononov shook down in 3rd, with rival Dmitry Koltukov gaining 2 points on him with a win. A dramatic Heat 15 ruled Hans Weber out of the chase for a second semi-final as his luck deserted him on the second day. Günther Bauer made a forceful move on the second lap that sent Weber into the fence and saw him harshly disqualified. Franz Zorn returned to winning ways to book his place in the semi-finals with a ride to spare and following a spread-out Heat 16. Jan Klatowski took second position ahead of reserve Marcus Gel, who scored his only point of the weekend as a replacement for Harold Simon. With defeats for each of the championship favourites, Dmitry Kometsevich was the points leader and the only undefeated rider after the fourth round. The top 6 riders had already confirmed their places in the semi-finals, leaving 2 positions up for grabs in the remaining 4 heats. Jan Klatowski needed at least second position from Heat 17 to have a realistic hope of getting the better of Stefan Svensson for a place in the top 8, but the Czech was stuck out at the back in the early laps. He eventually picked off Max Niedermayer for third, the German then finishing his day on the deck. Speedway regular Tobias Busch made his Ice Speedway World Championship debut less than a year after taking up the sport, coming in as a replacement for Hans Weber and picking up a confidence-boosting point at the expense of disappointing wildcard Luca Bauer in Heat 18. After 2 consecutive non-scoring rides, pre-race favourite Stefan Svensson took the win he desperately needed to move through to the semi-final stage, getting the better of Niklas Svensson and consigning his son to elimination in the process. Having conceded 2 points to championship rival Dmitry Koltakov in round 4, Igor Kononov could ill afford to drop more points when he took on Dmitry Kometsevich in Heat 20. But Kononov took a 4th race victory of the day, Kometsevich dropping his first points of the meeting in second. A familiar look to the top 8 in Berlin, with Niklas Svensson and Jan Klatowski both failing to take advantage of their final rides to challenge veterans Stefan Svensson and Günther Bauer for the last of the semi-final places. Dmitry Kometsevich lines up off the inside start position for the first semi-final. The 2016 champion top scorer in the heats, dropping his first point last time out in Heat 20. Alongside him, Dinar Valeev, who got the better of both Ivanov and Kononov in the heats to qualify as 4th seed. Daniil Ivanov, gate 3, struggling with injury all weekend. He'll need to make a start to have a hope. Just doesn't seem to have the pace. Stefan Svensson, the outsider, off gate 4. Kometsevich, Valeev, Ivanov and Svensson for the first semi-final. A remarkably even break, and it's the rider off the inside who takes the advantage, but he does bobble coming off turn 2, and it's Valeev now who has the pace up in second position. Stefan Svensson gets the better of Daniil Ivanov in the early stages. The Russian will try to fight back, Svensson moving to block. Meanwhile, up front, Kometsevich is doing the same against Valeev, who cuts back beautifully, coming off turn 2. Twice Kometsevich made the same mistake on the opening 2 laps, and the second time Valeev was poised to pounce as Stefan Svensson gets out of shape, coming off turn 4, and that's a gift for Daniil Ivanov, who didn't seem even close to passing Stefan Svensson on the opening 2 laps, but an error from the veteran Swede, and that's a point given up really from Stefan Svensson. We've seen already Ivanov struggling in the latter stages of the meeting here in Berlin yesterday. And will Stefan Svensson have time to reel him back in? It's not going to decide the qualifiers to the final, because Dinar Valeev and Dmitry Kometsevich have stretched well clear as Stefan Svensson backs out of it and raises a hand out at the back to retire. Valeev comfortable in the end after passing Dmitry Kometsevich on lap 2. Down to the inside line, Kometsevich just bobbling twice on the opening 2 turns. Firstly on lap 1, again on lap 2, and Valeev taking advantage. Home hero Günther Bauer would need to pull off a miracle to make the final here, as the top 2 in the championship line up off the inside gates. It's Koltakov, Kononov, Zorn and Bauer for the second semi-final. Watch for the riders off gates 1 and 2, the championship contenders. Koltakov making a faster start, then moving to block Kononov. Zorn straight back to the inside line around the first 2 turns as Kononov fires past Koltakov beautifully coming off turn 2. Koltakov wasn't expecting that move, but repays the compliment coming off turn 4 to lead at the end of the opening lap. So it's Koltakov ahead of Kononov, who've broken clear. Zorn in 3rd position, getting the better of Günther Bauer. And as things stand, this is largely to the form book, certainly on the evidence of what we've seen in Berlin this weekend. No further surprises from Franz Zorn, who looks over his shoulder coming down the straight just to see that Günther Bauer is safely behind him. And the riders stretching away from one another in this second semi-final. Bauer now the length of a straight behind the leading Russians. And and it's going to be Dmitry Koltykov and Igor Kononov safely through as expected, although Koltykov bouncing this way and that as he comes into the turns. Trying for traction, pulling well clear. He can afford to back out of it now, but this is a commanding victory from Dmitry Koltykov that really stamps his authority on the championship once again. What a winning margin that was over his main championship rival. Koltykov with the 3 race points then, Kononov home for 2, Zorn and Bauer eliminated as largely expected in the second semi-final. So the top 4 in the heats have all made it safely through to line up for the final. Dmitry Koltykov off gate 1, looking to make further gains in the championship hunt. His focus will be on Igor Kononov here. Can Dinar Valeev take advantage of that to secure a first win? He goes off gate 2 in blue. Dmitry Kometsevich off gate 3 started the heats in fine form, but he suffered defeats in his last 2 rides. The outside gate, Igor Kononov getting the better of Dmitry Koltykov here could prove essential, but certainly a challenge. He's got the outside gate as the lowest qualifier to the final. Koltykov, Valeev, Kometsevich and Kononov for the second final of the weekend in Berlin, which gets underway. Another level break, but it's Kononov who's stuck on the outside and the 3 riders on the inside move one another out. Kononov takes advantage to lead coming off turn 2. Well, perhaps it wasn't as difficult as I expected for Kononov to come from the outside gate because he's hit the front and he's got Dinar Valeev between himself and main championship rival Dmitry Koltykov. This is an excellent result as it stands for Igor Kononov. Dmitry Kometsevich has been left at the back. He was trapped on the outside of a 3 abreast situation on the first 2 turns and he doesn't seem to be in contention for the podium. The race at the moment is over second with Dinar Valeev fighting for all he's worth to hold on to second, but it's Koltykov who seems to have the momentum. Has he got the time to find a way through? Valeev conservative on the inside, bobbled slightly, and that's all that Dmitry Koltykov needed to come into second place. Kononov, though it is, who has a sizable margin out in front. We saw Valeev getting off the bike, almost off the bike there. How on earth did he manage to stay on? But he's lost out on 3rd position as Dmitry Kometsevich comes through. And a race to the line. Dmitry Koltykov from nowhere snatches victory over Igor Kononov. Well, it looked as though Kononov was about to return to top spot. And Dmitry Koltykov, who was soundly beaten for the majority of that race there, ends up coming up with a race victory to win the double here in Berlin. Well, we saw his victory margin over Igor Kononov in the semi-finals. We certainly knew he was capable of reeling in that margin, but how on earth did he manage to do it on lap number 4? Koltykov to win it ahead of Kononov, and a crucial result in the championship. No major surprises in either the semi-finals or the finals, really, which did run to form. In fact, the entire top 8 scorers following their championship ranking in their finishing position for the day. I was happy with the first part of the meeting, but then I had some problems with my suspension, so I had to change bikes. That didn't work out too well, but thankfully in the final, Dinar Valeev handed me the present of a podium place. It's been a tough championship for me, but I'll keep pushing in the final round. I'm very tired. Today was a very hard race for me. I had some problems with the engine, so I just couldn't get out of the start as I usually do, even against European riders. Now the leader is far ahead, which is very disappointing. Today it was even harder than yesterday, and I dropped a point in my first ride to Kometsevich. After my 3rd ride, I swapped over to my spare because I wasn't happy with my setup, but in the final I managed to make 2 overtakes, including passing Kononov, so I'm very grateful to my team and mechanics. I will keep pushing to hold on to this position. In the overall standings, 3rd and 4th positions now look settled, with only 2 scoring days remaining in the championship. Franz Zorn and Stefan Svensson also consolidated their respective positions. But with just 1 dropped point in 14 rides, Dmitry Koltykov has plenty to celebrate in Berlin, leaving Germany with an 8-point advantage over Igor Kononov.